Hey, what's up guys? It's David, also known as TystEld. Today I wanted to talk about the weapons of Hades. Now, there are some interesting implications based off of the original wielders of these weapons in Hades, but even more so, there aren't many ties to actual Greek myth within these weapons. Now, going through them one by one, we have the sword Stygius, the spear Varatha, the shield Aegis, the bow Coronat, the twin fists Malphon, and the railgun Exodrift. Now, looking at Stygius, you may recognize Stygius from Stygian Steel in the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. However, to my knowledge, there are no Greek myths with Stygian Steel or the blade Stygius. Now, the name Stygius is based off of the name for the river Styx, or the goddess Styx, both of whom relate to the underworld, so it makes sense why these connections were made. However, again, Stygius is not a sword that ever appears in Greek myth. Moreover, it was originally wielded in the game Hades by the god Poseidon, which is interesting because Poseidon never wielded a sword. Poseidon's weapon of choice has almost always been a trident. It's why he's often depicted, almost always depicted, with a trident. To make his original weapon a sword is an interesting, although very likely incorrect, depiction of the original god's birth. Moving from Stygius, we have the spear Varatha. Now, Varatha is an interesting one because Hades similarly never used a two-headed spear in myth. As the shepherd of the dead, similarly to Hermes, Hades used the staff. Now, Varatha can be argued for, however, due to the fact that Zeus used his lightning bolts, which function very similar to spears, while Poseidon used his trident, a three-tipped spear. So giving the last brother of the big three a two-headed spear makes a certain amount of sense. This isn't to mention, of course, that in modern artwork, Hades is depicted with a two-headed spear with some frequency. Again, as far as I know, no real connection to myth though. Then, of course, we have Aegis. Now, Aegis is the one weapon that does have a strong connection to Greek mythology. Aegis is the shield bore by both Zeus and Athena, as well as other gods and even some heroes. Aegis is described either as a goatskin shield or a shield bearing the depiction of the Gorgon Medusa's head, or it is depicted as again having Medusa's head on it, but also being made out of golden scales with pieces of cloth to adorn it. Of course, in the game Hades, the Aegis does not look like this at all. In Hades, the Aegis seems to have bone spikes jutting out of the shield's face, with a serpentine, almost bone hydra-esque face sticking out of it. Of course, this could be a reference to the Lernian Hydra, or it could be a reference to Medusa and just making it a tad more underworldy. That being said, within Hades, the aspect of Zeus rains down lightning bolts, which in some myths, it's true. When a god shakes Aegis, thunderclouds appear over Mount Ida and casts fear into the souls of mortal men. And then we get to this just straight ridiculous. Sounds mean, but really it is pretty ridiculous. that these weapons are attributed to such gods. The first is the bow Coronach, and despite the badass name, Coronach is not even Greek in name. It sounds closer to Gaelic. Coronach was originally wielded, in the game Hades at least, by the goddess Hera. If you know your Greek mythology, you know that Hera never wielded a bow. Those depicted with a bow were Artemis, Apollo, the centaur Chiron, but Hera, the goddess of marriage, the goddess of family, the queen of the gods, never used a bow. Similarly, the twin fists Malphon were, in the game Hades, used by Demeter. Now, while the image of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest of seasons, one of the original 6 Olympians, swinging her fists around to fight titans that were depicted as much larger than her, is incredibly funny. Demeter never used fisticuffs or gauntlets to fight. Malphon, similarly to Coronach, does not even have Greek origins within its name. There's no mention of a Malphon within Greek myths, to my knowledge. And the most ridiculous of all, perhaps one of my favorite weapons in the game, just for the implication that it has. Exodrift, the railgun. Exodrift was supposedly originally wielded by the goddess Hestia. For those of you who have not heard of Hestia before, she is the goddess of hearth and home. She is the goddess who gave up her seat on Olympus for another god. Hestia, of all gods and goddesses, is perhaps one of the least dramatic goddesses. She is a goddess of safety and comfort. She is a protector of your home, and she's not doing it with a fucking gun. Exodrift is a railgun, but it's also a grenade launcher. The image of peaceful Hestia going off with a gun and a rocket launcher is hilarious. The implication here is that Hestia, at one point, was out to kill. She wanted blood on her hands and was probably closer to the god of war before Ares came around. And while there are some fights within one's home, it is usually not to the extent of needing a railgun. The funny thing about all of this to me is that Hades has done a fantastic job about taking Greek mythology and making it relevant and fun for people who are new to it. Hades has done so well with their mythology and their research. So the implications made by these weapons and the rewriting of Greek mythology here is, at least in my mind, something that I actually don't like. While I appreciate Supergiant's effort to make these weapons a part of their game and a part of the mythology in their game, it's one of the few things that isn't accurate to mythology and should be taken with a grain of salt. Anyways, that's all the time I have. I'll be back with a longer video, but for now, talk to you guys later.
You failed, as was surely fated.